Hello, Steve Arts 89. Well, I just watched the second episode of Chucky Season 2. Thank God for Meg Tilly. She's the only thing saving this series. It's such a pity. They had such a great setup for the second season at the end of the first season, and they just did a reset. They just reset it to the formula. And I'm finding the kids' story really boring because it's every other horror movie we've ever seen. You know, there's some monster or doll or something stalking the kids and no one believes them and it hides in plain sight, and the adults are the enemy. They don't listen. They're always setting them up in situations that put them in danger, and they have to... It's just so been done before. It's just so formulaic and generic, and it's just by the numbers. And I'm like, why were they afraid to do something different? Did they not have the imagination to do anything with the setup they had for the last season? It's just really disappointing. And like I said, thank God for Meg Tilly, because she makes the show interesting. Her story is just off the wall insane. You never know what's going to happen next, and the series could just be her, because nothing's happening with these kids. They're just walking around this Catholic boarding school, pretending like Chucky isn't sitting in the room giving them the finger, but then he ends up running off because the principal literally locks the main kid in the room with Chucky to study the Bible, and he hits Chucky, and Chucky runs up a chimney basically after taking a photo. Eventually they capture Chucky, and they realise that this Chucky, because we've got multiple Chuckies now, at least there's a few, some survived. They did a little bit with that at least. He's like a scout Chucky, and they don't know who he's scouting for. And I think that leads into the Meg Tilly story. So Meg Tilly is still possessed by Tiffany, and she wakes up in the morning, stretches, and finds her hands covered in blood, and finds the head of one of the Tiffany dolls in her bed. How that happened, who knows? She goes to speak to her little friend she removed her arms and legs from, and we get an idea of what her day-to-day life is like, and it's bizarre and hellish. Basically, she just props her up and talks to her and cooks for her and bakes for her, and we've got everything we need here. It's just insanity. And she just wheels her into a room and gags her whenever someone comes near the house. We have a detective showing up, and he is showing up by surprise. He climbed over the fence, and he's sort of in her face, and he's like a fan, but he's a detective. So she's like, her ego's all excited, but then she's like, this man's dangerous. And she's the worst actress ever when he's asking her questions. Before he even asks her questions, she's like, no. She's just insane, and she's fabulous. You never know what is going to happen with that storyline and with that character. And basically he comes back. She's expecting guests. She's got Glenn and Glenda coming, they, them, as it says on their number plate. But before they get there, the detective shows up. So she opens the door expecting her friends, and there he's there, and he's like he's in the door. And she's like, okay, come in. And as soon as he turns her back, she slits his throat and then laughs maniacally. And then she's trying to clean up while they, them appear. They basically get let in, and they show up in their car, and then they're standing there. We just see their shoes, and then it pans up and then looks down at Jennifer Tilly cleaning up the blood. And she's like, oh, it's so nice to see your faces. And of course we don't see their faces, we just see the backs of their legs. And we find out that her little friend is communing with Chucky and working with Chucky and planning something with Chucky, and I'm guessing they're scouting. So at least they're doing something interesting with that side of things. There is something happening, but the story with the kids is so generic and boring. And like Lexi's got a roommate who's a klepto, and she's seen Chucky already, but she's lying, and she's one of the group now, so they're like a little Scooby gang. The boys haven't outed themselves, so they're roommates in a room together, so at least there's that. And there are some funny moments where the priest or principal, whatever, is lecturing them about not going near girls and so forth, and Lexi's like, because one of the girls is telling me, you can kind of have friends over, just have your door open if they're a boy, and she's like, oh, we don't have to worry about those two. So a little bit of joke here and there, but that's about it. So that story is really boring. The Jennifer Tilly, oh god, which is which? I get confused. That is interesting. She's saving the show. She's keeping it interesting, but she can't carry the whole thing. They're going to have to pick the other side of the story up pretty soon, otherwise, I'm just really disappointed they went in this direction. They just ditched so much potential with last season's setup, and now they've just stuck themselves with sort of two stories, and one is absolutely generic and boring. But I'm going to go. I'm going to be hopeful that season 3 is going to pick up, that they've got some plans, and just the setup is the boring part. The actual payoff is actually going to go somewhere, but we'll see. Bye.